Good morning again. I am Mignon Dobbins, your music director. My full-time job is teaching music for Winston-Salem Forsyth County Schools. This fellowship hired me as your part-time choir director in the fall of 1998. Around 2008, I became the music director. A couple of years later, my then partner, Eileen, signed the book and became a member. And in 2015, we were married here. We love this community, the choir, the staff, the congregation. I have had some of the peak musical experiences of my career right in this room. Last week, I attended the annual conference of the Association for UU Music Ministries in Ann Arbor, Michigan. A big thank you to Brooks and Steve and Dale for leading music last Sunday while I was away. Today I want to share some information about that organization, its mission, and why it's important that I participate, as well as some highlights from the conference, especially one plenary session on responding to trauma that I found meaningful. I also hope I might pique your interest in participation in this group that is committed to music ministry, creativity, cultural awareness, and social justice. Would you show the music ministry slide, please? The mission of the Association for UU Music Ministries is to support music and worship arts professionals, leaders, and those they serve through advocacy, education, and inspiration. They do this by encouraging excellence and diversity in UU music programs, providing a network of support, education, and opportunities for spiritual growth, assisting and advising the UUA in its provisions of new materials, and working to reveal and celebrate the breadth and wealth of the world's music, which expresses and embodies our UU values. The UU Musicians Network, UUMN, was formed at the General Assembly in 1982. And in 1994, the UUMN took an active role in developing the first UUA hymnal, Singing the Living Tradition, and later the 2005 supplement, Singing the Journey. I was excited to learn last week that they will soon create a new hymnal supplement. This one will be digital in format and subscription-based, so it will be a living, breathing resource. In 2017, the name of the organization was changed from UUMN to AUUMM, the Association for UU Music Ministries. AUM now has about 550 members in the U.S. and Canada, and every summer they host a conference where members meet to educate and inspire one another. I experienced my first conference in 2001 at the Mountain Retreat Center at the behest of Carol Stewart. She's taking credit right now as we speak, and Judy Stein. I've attended 8 times since 2001 when the fellowship began to support my professional development. In its current form, the AUM annual conference is probably the most consistently meaningful and useful of all the professional development opportunities I pursue. This year's conference took place at the First UU Church of Ann Arbor, a congregation formed in 1865, now residing in a modern, eco-friendly building on a beautiful 45-acre property. The thrust of the conference was rest, renewal, and rebirth. We made space for self-care and processing the trauma we have all experienced. I hadn't been in person with this beloved community since 2018, and reconnecting with them was a balm to my soul. It's tempting to try to describe everything I heard and learned and felt at the conference, but I will just try to give you a snapshot of the program. There was a well-integrated and innovative worship service every morning. In the first service, Dr. Glenn Thomas Rideout described the shock of going into Detroit in March of 2020 and finding the Motor City virtually silent. The Detroit River runs behind GM headquarters, and he realized during the quiet of the lockdown that he had never actually heard the river before. Throughout the week, brilliant musicians, ministers, clinicians, and educators shared their experience and their expertise in workshops and master classes. Sometimes 3 or 4 sessions occurred simultaneously, so I had to make tough choices regarding which one to attend. Because musicians have a wide range of skill, the conference offered tools to develop knowledge and increase competence. There was instruction on conducting and rehearsal technique. There were choral reading sessions, copyright law 101, improvising harmony, several different styles of song learning, and my favorite this year, circle singing. You have been warned. Some programs address the needs and interests of specific populations. There was a workshop on integrating cultural context into worship, and another on using the Spanish language companion to our hymnal. There was a trans community singing session. There is a Black caucus and a BIPOC caucus. There was support for songwriters, official guidance about terms of employment and best practices, and conflict resolution. They even had Tai Chi. In keeping with the theme of rest, renewal, and rebirth, many sessions were geared to helping us process the difficult times we're in, adaptive tools for a chaotic world, rebuilding a music program, multi-platform worship, trauma-informed pedagogy, and vocal reconditioning. I was floored to learn how many singers besides myself have experienced vocal injury through the stress and anxiety of the pandemic. Especially relevant to me was the plenary by the UUA's Reverend Lisa Presley, holding fast to that which is good. How do we respond to collective trauma? And it was from her that I got the idea for the dialogue that we did earlier. I can't reproduce her whole session, but I will share a little of what I learned about how we process trauma, and then invite you to look at your own adaptations and consider what you want to keep and what you want to let go as we move forward. The pandemic is a collective trauma. The whole world experienced it. I can't think of another collective trauma in our lifetimes where we couldn't come together in person to process and grieve. Even though we are all going through the same pandemic, individual experiences are unique. Not everyone has the resources to avoid significant financial hardship. Not everyone has the same bandwidth for creativity and flexibility of response, especially in isolation. As they say, your mileage may vary. Many of us are exhausted. The toll on our bodies and brains and spirits has been profound. To make matters worse, the country is more polarized than ever, probably since the Civil War. Science has been politicized, and we are constantly othering and being othered for our moral, ethical, and medical decisions. I am not an expert on trauma or on the brain, so I'll ask for some grace as I share a little of what I am just beginning to understand. When we encounter an adverse life event, first, we experience it in our brain stems where the fight, flight, or freeze response keeps us safe in a life-threatening situation. Typically, the information travels quickly from the brainstem to the cortex so that we can process or describe it. In the case of trauma, there is a chemical block that keeps those parts of the brain from communicating with each other. So we react before we can think. We become reactive. Do give yourself a break if you've been a little more reactive than usual lately. How each of us reacts may depend on the different stress responses we have learned throughout our lives. Please show the stress response slide. Consider some possible characteristics of adverse experiences and crises. Is the event predictable or unpredictable? Is it moderate or extreme, short-term or prolonged? If it's predictable, moderate, and brief, we will learn resilience. We may even look back on it as character building. Remember the good resilience moves you have made. But if the crisis is unpredictable, extreme, and sustained, then we become hyper-vigilant. If we spend too long on high alert, we no longer trust the ground we stand on. We may lose the ability to concentrate or even listen. We may feel a sense of persecution or guilt. We may feel vulnerable, angry, or cynical. Whenever you may have been unable to be resilient and have become reactive, there was a good reason, and it probably had to do with previous trauma or current lack of resources. However you coped was the best you could manage at the time. Remember to be gentle with yourself. So how did we cope during this pandemic? We certainly gave up a lot. Think about which systems and practices we gave up that we should try to recover, and which ones are no longer relevant. We created new things out of necessity. Some were temporary measures, and others will be here for a while. The UUA has contracted with the RSA, the Royal Society for Arts, Manufactures, and Commerce. The RSA has created a rubric called the Future Change Framework. It was designed for the COVID pandemic, but it can be used for other transitional times as well. I just want to introduce you to this tool and invite you to consider exploring it later if you like. Here is one of the worksheets. Please show the exercise A scan slide. The top spaces are for you to metaphorically scan the landscape of your life and identify the actions, behaviors, structures, and beliefs you observe that are new as a result of the crisis. These are generally easy to spot. The bottom row is for the things that have stopped, either by accident or by design. It is harder to see what is no longer there. Now please show the exercise B map slide. This map allows you to take the things that we've started and the things we've stopped and decide whether to do them or not going forward. In the upper left corner lists the things we did to respond to immediate demands, but realize they were temporary measures specific to the crisis, and we can throw them away now. Are you still wiping down your groceries? In the upper right-hand corner, we list new things we have tried that may show some promise for the future, and we can amplify these innovative measures. In the lower left corner are things we stopped doing that are actually obsolete, and we can let them go. In the lower right corner, we list things we had to pause during the crisis, but may be ready to restart. Those are my favorite. We can take away that slide now. On the order of service that you can open using the QR code posted around the room, there is a link to the RSA Future Change Framework if you would like to download the toolkit later and use it on your own. The resiliency and reactivity exhibited during this pandemic is unique to each person, but there are clusters of similar responses. We all joked early on about how the lockdown was torture for extroverts and heaven for introverts, and we know that's an overgeneralization. There are, however, similar experiences shared among certain groups. And while this has been soul-crushing for many teachers, in hindsight, I am proud of the resilience shown in parts of our school district during lockdown, continuing to respond to food insecurity, providing every student with a Chromebook, sending buses to neighborhoods to serve as mobile hotspots, teachers shifting their emphasis from rigor to social and emotional learning in response to student needs. Church musicians, like teachers, and many are both, worked more hours than ever, learning new skills for online and multi-platform worship. We pined for our choirs and our congregations. In times of crisis, our instinct is always to sing. But nope, the lockdown had scarcely started when we heard about the super spreader choir rehearsal in Washington State. Great, singing can kill you. So much of music involves air, and now we can't trust the air we breathe. AU moderator and award-winning vocalist Sarah Jebian responded by creating and committing to this daily affirmation. Singing is safe. Singing is safe. Singing is safe. Here at the fellowship, the pandemic hit when we had no minister. The staff and committees and volunteers responded by overperforming. Karen made sure everyone could connect in some way. A volunteer tech team emerged. We turned our homes and cars into virtual meeting spaces, pulpits, sound booths, music studios, and pews. Dr. Rideout said, "I remember the music we made anyway." It was hard work. It was expensive, and it was exhausting. We've grown weary of masks and rules. We miss hugging and eating together and reading each other's lips. We're living through a paradox of wanting things to return to how they used to be while grappling with the truth that some things will never be how they used to be. Back to the conference. I was impressed with how intentionally the leadership modeled our UU values and principles and stayed in covenant, and how the membership was right on board. There was a greater ministerial and UUA presence than I remember seeing in years past. UUA President Susan Frederick Gray was there, as well as Reverend Sadie Lansdale from just down the road in Greensboro. There were lay musicians present, including a Greensboro choir member. I have a regular professional membership in AUM, but they offer inexpensive team and affiliate memberships, and I would like to encourage anyone involved in our music program to consider joining AUM and even attending an annual conference. Thank you for supporting my participation in AUM by appreciating the importance of professional development and continuing to fund it. When you see me trying something new, there's a good chance it came from collaborating with my peers. And thank you for letting me share a small sample of what I experienced in Ann Arbor this year. I'd like to close my remarks with a song by Shoshana Jedwab. It's a folk song of compassion and love based on the book of Ruth. It's sung at weddings and has also been embraced by social justice movements. I've heard that the UUs sing it a little differently from Shoshana's original, and I am told that she is perfectly okay with that. So this version is somewhere between hers and the one I heard from Matt Meyer last week in a call and response workshop. Where you go, I will go, beloved. Where you go, I will go. Where you go, I will go, beloved. Where you go, I will go. Where you go, I will go, beloved. Where you go, I will go. Where you go, I will go, beloved. Where you go, I will go. For your people are my people. Your people are mine. For your people are my people. Your divine, my divine. For your people are my people, your people are mine. For your people are my people, your divine, my divine. I believe there's actually a slide for that. I'm sorry, I forgot to say so. Where you go, I will go, beloved. Where you go, I will go. Where you go, I will go, beloved. Where you go, I will go. For your people are my people. Your people are mine. For your people are my people. Your divine, my divine. For your people are my people, your people are mine. For your people are my people, your divine, my divine.